Our Across the Aisle segment tonight, even Democrats are starting to grumble about Nancy Pelosi. Democratic Congressman Philemon Vela said, and I quote here, "I think you'd have to be an idiot to think we could win the House with Pelosi at the top." Well, Pelosi is one of the most successful fundraisers for Democrats, but all that money from her friends in Hollywood and Silicon Valley doesn't matter if Democrats keep losing. And remember, they've lost over 1,000 seats across the country over the past 8 years. But listen to her defend her leadership.
And it's self-evident. But I think I'm worth the trouble, very frankly. I love the fray. I'm not disrespectful of people's views.
With me now, professor and author of Obama's America, A Transformative Vision of Our National Identity, Ian Reifowitz. Ian, good to see you.
Good to see you again, Liz.
All right, Ian, what do you say? Nancy Pelosi, she says she's worth the trouble. Do you agree?
Well, we could turn the question around another way. Mike Pence has much stronger approval ratings than Donald Trump. Are we going to ask, or is Republican Party going to ask Donald Trump to resign? I really don't think so.
Well, Mike Pence hasn't caused the Republicans to lose 1,000 seats across the country in the past 8 years. That's part of the responsibility of the party leaders to make sure that their party has a deep bench, that they're holding on to their seats. Nancy Pelosi hasn't done that. I mean, are you really going to defend her?
Well, look, at the end of the day, Nancy Pelosi is the boogeyman that Republicans have because there is no president, there is no other national leader of stature who's been around for a while. Nancy Pelosi's been a very effective speaker, but if she were to resign tomorrow, there would be a new boogeyman. It would be Chuck Schumer. It would be somebody else. At the end of the day, we have to judge Nancy Pelosi largely on her effectiveness as a legislator. She's was a very effective speaker for 4 years. She passed Obamacare through the House. She got a number of bills through the House that the Democratic Senate was unable to pass, like cap and trade and the DREAM Act. So she's been a very effective legislator. You noted she's been a very effective fundraiser. I don't see any evidence that Nancy Pelosi is the reason why Democrats lost in conservative districts where they're supposed to lose. If I really felt like removing her, not that I have the power to do so, would help Democrats in 2018, sure, why not?
Listen,
I would be happy to do it.
I'm surprised Democrats aren't calling for a new leader. I guess no disrespect even towards Speaker Pelosi. It just seems that her time has come and gone. I mean, yeah, she is one of the primary fundraisers for the Democratic Party, but what we just saw happen in Georgia's 6th district, I mean, you can't buy seats anymore. That's not the way that it works. Democrats outspent Republicans $23 million to something like $6 or $7 million. The Republicans still won there. And you mentioned, her legislative history or resume here. Yeah, she passed Obamacare. It's going to be repealed less than 10 years later, and they're down 1,000 seats. But let's go down this bench. Because I guess my thesis, and I'm going to be pretty upfront about my thesis for this segment, is that the Democrats' bench is their problem here. The people that they're putting in elected office, the people that are representing you, Ian, the liberal electorate here, they're not accurately representing the feelings of the American people. So we have Nancy Pelosi, then we have Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she's one of the primary leaders of the Democratic Party, the progressive voice of the day, if you will. And right now she's engaging in what I would call violent rhetoric. She's calling Republicans, essentially calling them evil, saying people will die if we repeal Obamacare, and saying that the Senate Republicans' health care bill is blood money. Does that represent your view?
Well, there was a lot there to unpack. First of all, I hate to say, but you got the Georgia 6 spending wrong. The two sides spent just about an equal amount. Republicans actually had to bring in about $12 million from outside groups, including the National Republican Congressional Committee, Paul Ryan's Super PAC, and a couple of other groups. Democrats only had to bring in about $6 million from the DCCC and outside groups because Ossoff raised enough money on his own directly. But overall spending was about the same between the two districts. Now, as for Elizabeth Warren's rhetoric, it's a pretty straightforward thing. People who have insurance and need that insurance to get care and then lose that insurance, they might die if they can't get that care. Those are simple facts. Just like it's a simple fact to say if you go to war, people will die. That doesn't mean you're saying anything evil. Those are just straightforward facts.
Okay, well, using those facts, I'll accept that.
Trump is going to have to run on that.
I'll accept that. I'll accept that premise. Let's use that premise for a second and say the 30 million people who lost their health insurance plans under Obamacare. I mean, were the Democrats all about blood money? Were they the party of death? Were they, only out to knock people off and kill them? Because the same thing happened. And using your premise, if people are going to die when they're knocked off their plan, more people were knocked off the plan under Obamacare than potentially could be under the Republican repeal.
No, I'm sorry, but again, I have to correct you on the facts here because I've done this research for my own projects. No, people gained 20 million people gained coverage under Obamacare. Anybody who lost their insurance coverage didn't actually lose their insurance coverage. I think you're talking about canceled plans. I've done the research on this. Those are people who got a letter saying that the specific plan they had one year might not be available the next year.
Right, they got knocked off their plans. I mean, you can't state it more bluntly that they got knocked off their plans. They lost their plans.
No, they didn't. If you got a letter in November saying that by January 1st, this plan X will not exist, but by January 1st, you can buy this plan, or this plan, then you're still going to be on a plan.
That's the same option. That's the same exact option. That's the same exact option that people will have if they lose their plan under the Republicans' repeal. They still have the option to purchase another one. The argument Democrats are making is that they might not be able to afford it, but that same argument, if we're using an equal playing field here, would apply to those 30 million people too.
No, the people who first of all, it wasn't 30 million. The best estimates that I did in my research was that by 2015, about 3 million people didn't lose their plan, just had to change their plans. Why? Because most of the plans they were on were junk plans. The people who would lose care under Trump care would lose junk plans that covered very, very little, but other than taking money from people who were paying premiums.
No. Wait a second. I have to call you out on that one. My dad is a small business owner. Ian, my dad is a small business owner, and he and my mom are very healthy. They had catastrophic insurance for themselves until Obamacare came along. Catastrophic insurance meaning my mom is past her childbearing years. She doesn't need maternity coverage anymore. They don't anticipate any major surgeries. They had catastrophic coverage and paid the rest out of pocket. That's how my dad made his business work. When Obamacare came along, they were told by the government, your plan's not good enough. You're not allowed to have the plan that you choose. You have to, under penalty of the law, buy more insurance than you want.
That's right. And that's what's necessary in order to ensure not a family, but a population. The people who don't need maternity care might have to pay for Medicare, for maternity coverage. And the people who don't need Viagra might have to pay for Viagra coverage. And the people who don't need pediatric care might still have to pay for pediatric care because everybody's going to need something.
No,
when you want to ensure a population,
that's not how it works in a free country. The government doesn't come in and tell you that you're not allowed to make the choice that you want to make so that someone else can make a different choice. That's simply not how it works. That's not how freedom works. And impractically, even if that wasn't the premise of our country, it didn't even work. There are 29 million Americans who still don't have any health insurance under Obamacare. The plan that was supposed to provide universal coverage, the plan that was supposed to enable people without insurance to get insurance, riding on the backs of people like my mom and dad, it didn't work practically. That's why Democrats keep losing seats, because they're arguing for things that don't work and that cost everyday Americans a ton of money. And they